Hi, and welcome. In this presentation, we're going to break down one of the most useful and most misunderstood functions in Excel, VLOOKUP. We won't just look at the basic syntax. Instead, we'll walk through 6 real scenarios you're likely to run into at work. Everything from a simple price lookup to pulling data across sheets to handling errors gracefully, and even a couple of situations where VLOOKUP alone isn't enough, and I'll show you exactly how to work around those. Here's our roadmap. We'll go through 6 scenarios, one at a time. First, the basic lookup, an exact match, like finding a price from a product code. Second, approximate match, used for things like grading scales or tax brackets, where you're matching a value into a range rather than an exact code. Third, cross-sheet lookup, pulling information from a different tab in the same workbook. Fourth, using IFERROR alongside VLOOKUP so that if a value isn't found, your spreadsheet shows a clean message instead of a scary-looking error. Fifth, a two-way lookup, where we combine index and match to find a value based on 2 criteria at once, like a product and a month. And sixth, how to handle the classic VLOOKUP limitation, looking to the left. VLOOKUP can only look right, so we'll fix that with index and match as well. Let's dive in. Let's start with the classic use case, looking up a price by product code. Here's our formula. Equals VLOOKUP, then B12. That's our lookup value, the product code we're searching for. Next is A5 to C9. That's the table array, the full range of data we're searching through. Then the number 3. That's the column index number, telling Excel to return whatever's in the 3rd column of that range, which in our case is price. And finally, false. That last argument is really important. False means we want an exact match. When you're looking up something like a product code, an employee ID, or a name, you almost always want false, because an approximate match could quietly return the wrong row, and you might not even notice. So if we type in P102 as our code, VLOOKUP scans down column A, finds P102, and pulls back $29.50 from the price column, automatically. The key takeaway here: always use false for exact match lookups. It's a small detail, but it's the single most common VLOOKUP mistake. People leave it out or set it to true and get incorrect results without any warning. Now let's look at a different kind of lookup. One where we're not matching an exact value, but rather figuring out which range or tier a number falls into. A great example is grading a test score. Our formula is VLOOKUP of B8, the score we're checking, against the range A2 to B6, returning column 2, which is the grade. But this time, the last argument is true, not false. True tells Excel, don't look for an exact match. Instead, find the largest value in the first column that is less than or equal to my lookup value. So if someone scored an 84, Excel looks down the min score column, 0, 60, 70, 80, 90, and stops at 80. Because 84 is greater than or equal to 80, but less than 90. That gives us a grade of B. There's one critical requirement for this to work. The first column must be sorted in ascending order. If it's not sorted, approximate match can return completely wrong results because Excel's search logic depends on that order. This pattern shows up constantly. Grading scales, tax brackets, shipping cost tiers, sales commission levels. Anytime you're bucketing a number into a range, this is the tool for the job. Next, let's talk about looking up data that lives on a completely different tab. This is incredibly common. You might have a raw data tab and a separate summary or report tab. Here, our formula is VLOOKUP of B4, then employee source, in quotes with an exclamation mark, followed by the range A2 to D6, returning column 3, with false for exact match. The only new piece here is that sheet reference, employee source. Notice it's wrapped in single quotes. That's required whenever a sheet name contains a space. If your sheet were just called data with no space, you wouldn't need the quotes at all, but it's a safe habit to include them anyway. Everything else about this formula works exactly like the basic VLOOKUP we saw in scenario 1. Excel just reaches over to that other tab to grab the table array from there instead of from the current sheet. This is a great way to keep your raw data clean and separate from your reporting, while still pulling live values into your summary. So what happens when VLOOKUP can't find a match? By default, you get a #NA error. And if that formula is feeding into a report or dashboard, an ugly error like that can look broken, even if everything is actually working correctly. That's where IFERROR comes in. We wrap our entire VLOOKUP inside an IFERROR function. IFERROR, then the VLOOKUP formula, then a comma, then the text we want to show instead, in this case, not found. Here's how to read it. IFERROR checks whatever formula is inside it. If that formula returns a normal value, IFERROR just passes it through untouched. But if it returns any error, not just #NA, but also things like #ref or #value, IFERROR catches it and shows your custom message instead. Look at our example table. P101 and P103 are found just fine and return their product names. But P999 and P777 don't exist in our source data. So instead of a jarring #NA, we get a clean dash or a friendly not found message. This is a small formula change that makes a big difference in how professional your spreadsheets look to other people. Now we get to something VLOOKUP genuinely can't do on its own, looking up a value based on two different criteria at the same time. Imagine a pricing grid, products down the side, months across the top. We want the price for a specific product in a specific month. VLOOKUP only lets you search one column and pull from a fixed column number. It has no way to also search across a row of headers. So instead, we use index combined with match twice. Here's the formula. Index of the data range, B2 to E5, then match of the product against the product column, then match of the month against the header row. Let's break that down. The first match, match of product against A2 to A5, scans down and tells us which row our product is in. The second match, match of month against B1 to E1, scans across and tells us which column our month is in. Then index takes those two numbers, a row position and a column position, and returns whatever value sits at that exact intersection. In our example, USB-C hub crossed with March gives us $27.99, exactly the cell where that row and that column meet. This index match-match combination is the standard, reliable way to build a two-way lookup in Excel. And it's worth learning even if two-way lookups aren't something you need every day, because once you see this pattern, you'll recognize when it's the right tool. Our last scenario deals with one of VLOOKUP's most common frustrations. It can only look to the right. VLOOKUP always searches the first column of whatever range you give it, and then reads values from columns to the right of that. So if your ID or code column is on the right, and the value you actually want is to the left of it, like a product name that sits to the left of a product code, VLOOKUP simply cannot reach it. No amount of clever column numbering will fix that. The limitation is structural. The fix, once again, is index and match. Our formula, index of A2 to A6, that's the product name column on the left. Then match of B8, our code, against B2 to B6, the code column, with a 0 for exact match. Match finds which row the code is in, and index simply returns whatever's in that row from column A, regardless of which side of the lookup column it's on. Index and match don't care about left or right at all. They just care about row position. Once you're comfortable with index and match, this so-called limitation of VLOOKUP stops being a problem altogether. And that brings us to our quick reference slide, all 6 formulas side by side for you to bookmark or screenshot. Basic lookup uses VLOOKUP with false for an exact match. Approximate match swaps that false for true for range-based lookups. Cross-sheet lookup adds a sheet name and exclamation mark before the range. Handling errors means wrapping the whole thing in IFERROR with a custom message. Two-way lookup replaces VLOOKUP entirely with index and a pair of match functions, one for the row, one for the column. And looking left uses that same index match pattern, just pointed at a column to the left of your lookup values instead of the right. If you take away just one thing from this presentation, let it be this. VLOOKUP is great for simple, single criteria left-to-right lookups, but index and match together are more flexible and can handle almost anything VLOOKUP can, plus the cases it can't. Thanks for following along. Now go try these out in your own spreadsheet.